We're glad to know that you've opened up your heart-shaped box to listen to us. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Cory.
And this week we will be discussing Nirvana's third and final album, In Utero, released in 1993, so now 30 years ago.
The Battle of the 93.
Yes, against the other very famous grunge band Pearl Jam. We did Versus last week, which is an interesting contrast to this, because Pearl Jam was definitely going for a more classic rock sound as opposed to Nirvana, who wanted to go more punk, is really more where we're going here. So if you haven't already, we did do an episode on Nevermind. So if you want to check that out, please do. We get into all of that. But anyway, album, huge success, changed music as we knew it in 1992. So anticipations were high, but Kurt Cobain, being the contradictory man that he is, he said that he didn't like how polished Nevermind was. His bandmates agreed. They just felt it was just not raw enough. Kurt even said it sounded like a Motley Crue record, which I totally disagree with. He was definitely exaggerating to make a point. It was not that polished. It's definitely still different, but that was Kurt Cobain for you. So they wanted to make this more raw record, 1993 In Utero, and they did not use Butch Vig of the previous album. Again, he produced Nevermind, which was a risk after its success, but they wanted to go back to basics here. And so they hired this guy, Steve Albini. He's worked with people up to this point, most known for working with the Pixies. Not the only folks he's worked with, though, but that was a huge influence on Nirvana, were the Pixies. So
yeah, Kurt was all about getting this guy for this album. Reading about this guy, he sounded like a real shite head. He does that. I mean, he was like, "Oh yeah, I'd work with them because they're like the little bands that I work with, and their labels up their ass." Like, okay, this is the guy you want, Kurt.
Yeah, but it seems like Kurt Cobain, he liked a lot of things more in idea than in execution. I think it's safe to say.
Well, yeah, because Albin was known as an engineer of sorts. Like, he had 30 mics around Grohl during this, you know? In my opinion, I would have to think that's what Kurt Cobain was after, is the engineering of the sound from this guy rather than the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, but it was insistent that they wanted him, and they recorded all of these songs in February of 1993, and the month after, they had two big live gigs in Brazil, one of which was a total disaster, and another of which was a triumph. So I think that kind of summed up where the band was at this point in time. A lot of ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys, because obviously they were somewhat feeling creative. They were writing enough new material for an album, but, well, Kurt Cobain was at this point dependent on heroin, and that does not make you as productive as you need to be, to put it lightly.
Yeah, I mean, and he had just became a father too.
That too.
Yeah, which sucks talking about the heroin and that at the same time, but it was 93, you know, they wanted an album out, not Nirvana, but the record label wanted an album out in 92. Kurt had a baby, and then that didn't happen, and they put Insecticide out, which we ate up back then, you know, but it was really cutting room floor stuff stuffed onto stuff we hadn't heard, you know, and we still ate it up.
Yeah, people were going to take what they could get, but this was the proper follow-up that everybody was waiting for.
Yeah.
And so album was recorded, and it was a mix of new and old material, actually. Quite a few songs on this album go back to the early 90s, even before Nevermind, which I find that pretty interesting. It's like this band's on their third album, and they're already going back into the vault a bit. Yeah, I just don't know if that's the best sign for a band's long-term stability or longevity, I guess you could say. We're already digging back.
I don't think, again, in my opinion, but I don't think they were going back there as much so for creativity as going back there to grab songs that they knew wasn't that they knew weren't going to be allowed on Nevermind and didn't fit the sound because I mean, in all honesty, this was almost like a threat album. I remember it. Like they were like, we're gonna bring you some stuff that you're not even gonna be able to listen to. We're gonna bring you this raw old school Nirvana on the next album we do. Is I'm paraphrasing a lot there, but that was what Kurt was saying back then, you know?
Yeah, that was it. And but album is recorded and with these Albini mixes. And well, it wasn't quite what they expected. They wanted something a bit more polished, actually. So the album went to Bob Ludwig for mastering, and then a few of the songs were remixed by Scott Litt, best known at this point for producing REM albums, to make them a bit more accessible to the general public. And naturally, those songs ended up being the ones released to radio.
Which is crazy because Albini ended up calling Nirvana poor man. I'm paraphrasing, but he was like a poor man's REM with a fuzz box. Is almost the actual quote, but he said that about them. So it's pretty crazy that somebody that had worked with REM came in and scooped up.
Yeah,
or one of the people.
Right. Yeah, and Steve Albini actually, when he worked with the band, he had pretty positive recollections of them in the studio. He didn't really have anything bad to say. It was how they handled the aftermath was why he was not happy. Let's put that into context. And
Yeah.
I mean, I could see why they didn't fully know what they were getting into, admittedly, the band, but they should have thought more about that. And yeah, this guy kind of got screwed, and he wasn't the most experienced producer.
Yeah.
He was an experienced engineer.
Yeah.
But not much of a producer. But
it really speaks to the youngness, I feel like, of them too, because I found myself asking the same question, or saying the same thing that you were just saying. Is like, why would you end this and be like, okay, and then 2 weeks later be like, nah, we're going back in to remix it? Of course the guy's gonna, well, it's etiquette. Of course the guy's gonna say no. He finished the album, you know what I'm saying? Like, instead of doing it in 2 weeks, instead of, and this is me just being critical for the sake of this conversation, but instead of doing all of your vocal tracks in 6 hours or whatever it was, the tiny amount of time, take time, listen. Don't worry about pushing this out in 2 weeks. If it's 3 weeks, if it's 4 weeks, give it more time. And I think that I always wonder, and I couldn't find it. Do you know if those mixes ever made it out in like a best of or
a lot of original mixes and alternate takes I know were released on box sets and whatnot later.
Right.
From what I'm understanding, I haven't listened to them because I just had to listen to the album as we have it. That's what we're here to discuss. And going into the other stuff can be a distraction, I think.
I feel you. I just wonder what they sounded like. It's curiosity,
Oh, most definitely.
Those.
Yeah, I would agree. It is a curiosity, and it was to many people, I would imagine. But regardless, the band was eventually ready to go for September of 1993 release. And the album being titled In Utero, naturally, it did have a bit of a provocative front cover and back cover, especially.
Here's the thing. So the front cover is an anatomy, a see-through anatomy mannequin with wings. It was risque, though. Thinking back, I was a young guy, but still was something that you didn't see on the cover of every album. But the mosaic or the abstract art piece on the back was definitely something to see.
Yeah, and this was actually so controversial that both Walmart and Kmart said they were not going to sell the album. They actually didn't. They sold it in a different form after Kurt Cobain's suicide. But before that, nope, they refused to sell it. And that definitely did have an effect on sales because those were two of the largest CD retailers at the time, which makes perfect sense to me.
It was never on the Blue Light Special, but Did it really? Do you think it really killed numbers? Do you think numbers would have been that more astronomical than what they were?
Maybe not that much more. I'm not saying the sales would have doubled
Heard.
or anything, but I think there would have been a difference. Certainly.
Yeah, hot tea take. I think it's shit that they did what they did with the release of this after his suicide, but that's
Oh,
just
I
me.
agree.
That's money grabbing bullshit at its peak there.
Well,
I'd like,
what else?
you know,
But what else do you expect from Walmart?
I expect more from Kmart.
Oh, okay, fair. Well, now they don't exist
I
anymore.
know, I
So
know,
what
I
are
know.
you?
But then
It
I
was all
held them.
because of this.
Yes, I held them to the blue light standard.
Uh, yeah, I was about to say Walmart is not, and principles. Walmart and principles don't really go together.
Truth.
And they've they have censored music of other instances, not just here. But anyway, album came in, anticipated album. It debuted at #1 and it sold 180,000 copies first week, which honestly I was kind of shocked to see. I thought that was kind of low.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
I mean,
I,
Nevermind was the third best selling album of 92.
they tried not to go crazy promoting this, though. I will give them that. You know, after everybody figured out how much they thought they were going to like it. I feel like, once that hype train started going, it went.
Yeah, I believe that. But on the other hand, it's just odd that Pearl Jam, they did even less promotion. This band still did a
Sure.
music video for the album. Pearl Jam did none, and they sold close to 1 million first week. And maybe I'm a bit deluded because we've done a lot of record breaking first week sales recently on here. But it's just shocking to me for this band that supposedly shifted the culture so much, which they did, but especially to have such a high selling album the year before.
Yeah.
That's gone diamond at this point. I mean, I understand why this wouldn't have sold as much in the long run, but I would have expected a bigger first week total.
I think two things. I think I said it before that put out insecticide and we ate it up. We were like, okay, give us whatever Nirvana you can, but also that could have aided in it not selling as much because everybody had their fill at that point. More so, from what I remember, maybe more so because I was a younger man and this was a super taboo album. That's where I'm getting it. This album was taboo. At release it was taboo. So it was, from a younger standpoint, it was tough to get your hands on.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
Like, as awesome as this album was, as far as like singles and hits and stuff like that back then, and radio play, thinking about it, I didn't see it in every CD case. I mean, we were 7th, 8th grade right then, so that was a tougher time to put this one in the old CD case.
And you probably
especially,
only had so many at that point in time too.
yeah, most definitely. Well, I mean, yeah, we had a bunch. I feel like everybody had their big CD case, but still, this was one that not everybody had. This is just an album that everybody didn't have.
Yeah, unlike Verses, which you thought everybody had.
Oh, most definitely. That goat llama, whatever the thing was on the front of that cover, that was in every CD case. I don't care who you were, you had that album.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, not everybody had it, but it still did pretty well. It sold over 15 million copies worldwide, 5 million in the US. So half of Nevermind, which, again, it's kind of like Bad following Thriller. Still a huge success, even if it wasn't quite as much as before. So you can't call this a flop by any means.
No.
And but less than a year after the album was released, of course, as we know, Kurt Cobain died in April of 1994. And that certainly, I think, helped people. I think it made people more interested in the album because they wanted to decipher the songs and see were there signs of this, of why did he do it. It was definitely part of the intrigue for folks after he died.
Also, not to go too far into my opinion on the album, but in a main in a mass populace opinion, I felt like a lot of these songs were more approachable to your regular listener than Nevermind. Um,
Really?
melodically too. I won't go into track by track, but there's some tracks that were accepted widely across all walks of life back then. You know, like
Oh,
all areas.
I meant some, but I don't think all of them do, was more my point. Like,
Oh
not
no,
all
not
of
all, not all, not all. But there were those tracks that people that weren't listening to Nevermind or probably would have never could listen to those songs on the radio and be like, "Who's that?" And you'd be like Nirvana, and they'd be like, "Oh, real?" You know,
Yeah, I guess it's
there's
not
no,
all as heavy as Nevermind, I guess you could
yeah,
say.
most definitely.
That that's a fair point, I think. But album was also obviously critically well regarded, and a good amount of people say it's Nirvana's best album, even if it wasn't their biggest. And but I guess we just kind of have to let's figure that out for ourselves, I guess.
Yeah, man.
In case you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. Leave us a nice rating and review, much appreciated. And also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Turntables and Tea Podcast and on X, formerly Twitter, at Turntables Tea. You'll get updates on our latest episodes and other goodies related to what we're doing here. With that, I'm ready to dive on into this bad boy. So, yeah, In Utero, here we go. The album begins with Serve the Servants. What the only I think this was the only song not demoed before the album, actually, I read.
Really?
Yes. And we kind of start off with this rocker with some self-deprecating lyrics. It's definitely a reaction to Fame, which Kurt Cobain did experience overnight. Um, yeah, this there were thoughts to put something else to open it, but I think this is a good opener. I think it shows that we are in for a new sound a bit, but it's not so inaccessible that a Nevermind fan will be turned off of it. I think the melody of it still shines through, even if it does have more of a raw sound, because this is not one of the remixed songs. So yeah, I think this is a good opener.
Yeah, this talk about accessible to people that were listening to Nevermind, like a new sound, but not inaccessible, like you said. It also, in the same breath, jumped the gap for the hardcore listeners and really gave a sense of an early Nirvana and all the way back to Lithium. Being one of the unedited, I can see what I would think Kurt was looking for, or Nirvana as a band was looking for, in the way of this raw room sound that they wanted and were looking for, going into recording this. I think this is a perfect example of that. It's polished and it's borderline poppy, but I feel like it really becomes a perfect picture of Nirvana and their sound. I have never until this week going through it like constantly, uh I can't help but hear Learn to Fly's origins inside of this. It's super weird, but check it out. They it may be just in my crazy brain they line up, but I can see something here. Then I started to link like Serve the Servants and then Grohl's leaving and it's Learn to Fly, and that's all conspiracy, but there's something there inside of the sound. The opening line here is, I talked about it at the end of our podcast last week, but we're getting a different Nirvana here than we did in Nevermind, and we're gonna get a little bit different Kurt Cobain here as well. We already talked about him becoming a father, and this opening line of teenage angst has paid off well. Now I'm bored and old is like legitimately Kurt in a nutshell right here on the first line of the album. So I always thought that was super cool too. I'm with you on the opener though. I like it as an opener. I can see this. I'll spoiler alert. I can see this in two other places on the album, and hopefully we'll talk about that. Hopefully I won't forget about that, and we'll talk about that as we go through. But I definitely think this is a neat way to open an album that everybody or a lot of people thought was just going to kick them in the butt. And there's that heaviness to it, but there is approachability, and it works out well here.
Yes, I agree. With that being said, we're on to the next song, which is Scentless Apprentice, the only song out of these 12 that has all band members credited as writers on it, much like Smells Like Teen Spirit. So, but this does not sound like Smells Like Teen Spirit in any way, let's be very clear. But the guitar riff specifically was written by Dave Grohl. So his songwriting just developing, we're hearing it here, which is definitely neat to see, I think. It was inspired by a book called Perfume, written by Patrick Suskind. Not a book I'd ever heard of before. I'd did research for this, but I always think it's cool to hear that a song was inspired by a book. I always like to hear that. And it's not the only song here that was, so, but anyway, this one, okay. It sounds fine in every way except for the screaming on the chorus. I mean, I expect Kurt Cobain to be screaming. We heard it on their biggest hit. But this in particular, I'm sure it's intentional, but he sounds like a caged monkey. I feel like it's like I'm thinking to myself, is this what passing a kidney stone sounds like? It was, and it's not just one part of the song. It's the whole chorus, and it is significant. It kind of really hurts the song a lot for me.
Yeah,
so.
Raw and scary is some of the notes on this as far as that screaming sound. Hot tea take, it's not the worst screaming he does on this album either. It might be some of the better screaming he does on this album. And it's still really raw and scary sounding. I love everybody in the same jam on this as far as creative goes. We get our normal too cool for school Kurt Cobain saying like, Grohl wrote this riff and it was real like cookie cutter and I didn't even want to jam on it. And then this song just took off and we all really found it and enjoyed it. I do love both of the guitar parts in this, the ascending and descending that are written by Grohl and Cobain. I really enjoy that. I love that this is really, it's almost a synopsis of this whole entire book. And it's such a cool story in its own right that I am 100% with you when it is marred by this chorus. I really think the song is hurt, like you said, by this chorus. It takes me away, and it's a cool. Just reading the lyrics is cool. But other than that screaming, it's tough to get through. With it in there.
Yeah, definitely. I'd have to say, definitely for me, the weakest in the first half of the album.
Yeah, and it. I think I even agree with you back then. The crazy part with this for me is it sounds unapproachable from the get-go. And not until, in my opinion, not until a few listens do you even have the start of a liking for it. Or I didn't, even back then. This is one that this week has taken legs a little bit more in listening to it over and over and over again. But I agree with you. It is first half of the album, probably the weakest. Not probably, it's the weakest.
Yeah, but admittedly, it has some tough competition in the first half. Specifically, one of them being our next song, Heart Shaped Box, closest we get to a love song on this album. It's even got some kind of power ballad elements, I feel like, in it, which is not something you would have expected quite from a grunge band, but anyway, it was premiered at the Hollywood Rock Festival in Sao Paulo, which that's saying something. They were ready enough to play it in front of a stadium crowd. I think that's saying something that they knew from the get-go this was a special song. Even Kurt had to admit, I knew this would be a single because there was just something special here. And it is definitely about Courtney Love, he was now married to, mother of his daughter. Um, I mean, I this relationship, you could tell, has definitely got a lot of toxicity in it. He's saying, I want to eat your cancer. I think that kind of tells you what we're doing here, but I think this is a real complex and sadly codependent relationship when it comes to addiction. And I think that it's a real look at that, but with the love underneath of it, despite the toxicity. And I have to agree, this is definitely a highlight of the album.
Yeah, this is one that made its way through the masses. This is definitely a giant hit. This was all over MTV and the radio. I used to wholeheartedly agree with you on, that with this codependency, and it's there. In fact, it wasn't until I read Cobain saying that he wrote it about children born with cancer, and until I read critics break it down, and one critic, I'm paraphrasing again, but said this is the most wild way that we've ever heard someone say I love you. And it's actually to that line that you were saying, I'll eat your cancer when you turn black, as far as a kid with cancer, and a parent singing this, which is how Cobain said it was written. But I want to go to what I always thought it was, same as you, is this codependent relationship, and more so how there's a few times in this album where I find that Cobain is telling a cohesive story, and then when we hit the refrain, he's letting us into himself. There's a couple times throughout this album where there's a story, and then the refrain is about his personal life, and then it goes back into a story, and I think this is one of them. So it's always been a great one. Hot take. This is probably the hottest heat take here. This is one of my least favorite songs for Dave Grohl's drums. They just, for me, always have sounded phoned in. I definitely hold him at a very high a very high bar. So that, I should have led with that, but it's definitely not my favorite as far as his drums. I love the end of this song though. I do. It's that smash your guitar and drum set sound that I always equate with Nirvana.
Yeah, I have to imagine by this point that Dave Grohl was probably starting to feel a bit like a George Harrison kind of being in Nirvana. I just honestly, even if Kurt Cobain were still with us today, I just don't see this band having the longevity of Pearl Jam, for one. I just don't see how it could have happened. I think Dave Grohl just had a lot of ideas in him that he needed to get out. And I think that it's not surprising to me to hear that reflected in the music, and that a listener can pick up on it, because this is definitely a band. It's definitely one man's vision.
Yeah, I'm 50-50 with you on that. We get to see one man's vision in the media a lot more, because the other three were very soft-spoken individuals as far as being young and in the media. There was an evolution of sound here on this album that I think that's a really cool talking point. If Cobain had not died, would they be around as long as Nirvana? It would be a different world, I think, without Foo Fighters and Grohl finding his run. But there's definitely an evolution here that even back then I was pretty happy to see what they would come up with next after this.
I mean, I meant more in terms of the fact that all the songs are written by one guy.
Oh yeah.
That was what
I'm with you. Yeah. Okay,
that's what I mean by that. It's one man's vision, because when one guy's doing all the songwriting,
that's true,
lyrics and music, I would imagine it's difficult to be in a band where you're just not splitting those duties, and there's somebody who wants to write and is writing good songs. We've seen it happen, well, in several bands.
Heard.
And
It's a good point.
Just have to think it would have happened in this one, because yeah, I don't imagine there being no Foo Fighters.
Yeah, no, that no.
No,
It's a sad world.
no. It just I just don't see that happening ever.
But there would have been no hole. Or would there? Oh, this is a rabbit hole we will not go down right now. This could be a whole episode right there.
Yeah. We're yeah, I don't think we don't have to talk about Courtney too much this episode. I don't think so.
I was gonna say I'm in a good mood, and I don't. There's no real Courtney stuff here, so I'm good.
There we have Heart-Shaped Box. Not too much talk about Courtney Love. She definitely doesn't figure into our next song, which is Rape Me. This is an anti-rape song. Putting that out there in case you haven't heard this song. But a lot heavier than the anti-rape song off of Nevermind, which was Polly. That was a very spare acoustic song, and this is a heavy rock song. And Nirvana very famously wanted to play this at the 1992 VMAs, but MTV said, "Oh no, you're not." And he played the opening chords of it before launching into Lithium, just to freak everybody out.
I remember that. That was awesome.
Yeah. That will, but that it would have been a really cool performance, because I like this song better than Lithium actually by quite a lot. This one, it was actually first recorded like before the February 93 sessions, a few months before, like October of 92. And he recorded it first take with his baby girl, Frances Bean, sitting on his lap, and we hear her cries on the song, which just adds another layer to all of it, which is insane. But overall, I think this is a powerful message, first of all. And this song is very blunt in its messaging. You're not going to have to speculate what it's about, you know. And it might make people uncomfortable. In fact, it probably will make a lot of people uncomfortable, but if you're going to make a message like this, you have to cross that line and make the listener uncomfortable. And I think that they did that here. And I do think this song is awesome, but admittedly, part of why I think it's awesome might be that because it was brilliantly used in an episode of Succession. But
Or that.
second best musical moment on that show, in my opinion.
Genius to use it. Genius to use it. It's a genius song, and its approach. Period. I mean, the composition is there. This isn't Cool Kid Kurt we get here, in my opinion, either. I mean, this is a thought-provoking song full of meaning, an anti-rape song titled "Rape Me," a screaming taunt that is undeniable. Tori Amos even went on record saying, like, people need to stop trying to act like this isn't, I'm paraphrasing, but act like this isn't a anti-rape song. You know, she said, even the first time I heard it, I was in a cold sweat at first when I heard the words, because they're very daunting, but in fact, it's that genius anti-rape. It's a very powerful song. This was part of that whole Walmart Kmart stuff, man. Yeah. And it's a very, very easily polarizing two-word thought there, you know. So to use it and be able to successfully use it in an anti-rape setting is genius. It's genius. This is another one, though, as risque as it was, as taboo as it was everywhere, man. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't on the radio every day, but this was a song everybody was talking about. You know, this is a song everybody was listening to together. This was Nirvana, man. This is one that put them right back on the map.
Yeah, this was the single after Heart-Shaped Box. It was released as a single with the closing track. I have to say, so as I said earlier, Heart-Shaped Box was the only song on the album that got a video. And part of that was because Kurt Cobain was actually scared to make another video because he felt the heart-shaped box video was so good he couldn't top it.
Yeah, that was a sick video.
Which is insane, but he did have a couple of treatments for a video for Rape Me, and I'm really sad that we didn't get to see that. I think this would have been a great video as well, but in doing research, an article from Jim DeRogatis, who actually did a lot of reporting on the R. Kelly case and really broke that through to everybody. So hats off to him for that. But this was before many of us even knew who R. Kelly was. He said, like, if this were a single with the video, it would have been a Madonna-sized controversy.
It would have. I think that really is one of the biggest reasons that that video was never made, is because, I mean, it's wild that the song made it over without, being a controversy that goes the wrong way, but to double down and do a video however you wanted to do it had the propensity to be a nightmare for the label, for MTV, for really everyone other than maybe the artists.
It definitely probably would have been ahead of its time seen that way now, but I think it would have been an important video, and I'm sad that we didn't see it. So
it definitely would have.
But alas, we still have a great song here.
Yeah.
Classic in my opinion. So, but we're not done taking on possibly controversial subjects here, but we're going to go back in history for our next song, which is Frances Farmer Will Have Her Revenge on Seattle. So, Frances Farmer was an actress born and raised in Seattle who had a career in Hollywood and Broadway throughout the 1930s. She wasn't like a Katharine Hepburn or Betty Davis big name, but she was out there. She was doing her thing. However, early 40s, she was having some real mental health problems. She was actually diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and as a result was institutionalized in the state of Washington for 8 years. And this is honestly, the fact that this happened to her is much more well known than any of her acting. This is really her claim to fame. People know that this happened to her, and it's very sad that they did, because just people with mental illnesses would get institutionalized and not properly treated. And Kurt Cobain read a biography about her called Shadowland, which a lot of it's actually been discredited in the years since its release, interestingly enough. But reading this book, Kurt Cobain saw a lot of himself in Frances Farmer, and I can actually totally see that, because I did watch the Montage of Heck documentary about Cobain on HBO, and that is a controversial documentary in its own right. Not everybody was happy with how it was done in that inner circle, but there's no doubt in my mind, I really do think he had a severe undiagnosed mental illness of some kind and just didn't have the proper resources to take care of it, because it's the only thing that I think can explain some of what went on with him. But that's a discussion for a different day. Back to Frances Farmer. My favorite thing about this song, I think it's a really neat story, first of all. I love that we're going to that historical place. And it's not the first song about her, but it might be the most famous. There's a really powerful refrain of, I miss the comfort in being sad. And I just have to say, for anybody who's, I know I've had my struggles with depression, definitely had some pretty major depressive episodes, and you get so used to being sad in those situations that it feels weird. It's uncomfortable to feel happy. I know I've been there before, like where I just felt wrong and weird feeling happy. It's like, and in that case, I really relate to this line, and I think that it's a really profound thought. and I'm glad that it was expressed in this song. And put that in with the interesting inspiration, and I think we have another winner.
Yeah, it definitely is a winner. It's more so, not more so. It definitely is a winner, even as a composition here. I love the intro to this song. It fits so beautifully, hits even harder sitting right behind Rape Me. Um, just the sliding up and down, it really warms up the song and sets off this beautiful composition, this beautiful kindred spirit stuff right here, as far as Kurt was considered. um it's just a really cool character piece. This is an evolving, I said it already, I'll say it again, an evolving Cobain. He's getting older, and it's a neat look into the maturity, or for lack of better words, the evolving maturity of his artistry. I think definitely a winner.
Yeah, for sure. But while we have the evolving, as I said earlier, there are some songs that go back to the beginning, or maybe not quite the beginning, but earlier days. And one of them is the next song, which is Dumb. The song actually dates back to 1990. So right after the first album, Bleach, before Nevermind. I think this is another song that deals with the complexities of happiness. I think I'm dumb, or maybe just happy, which definitely that kind of classic sarcasm that we would get from this band at this time. It's not a very heavy song, but it doesn't need to be. I think the story is what's important here, and I think it gets that across very well. This one, it wasn't a single, but it did get radio play nonetheless, from what I'm seeing, and I can see why. I'm glad they resurrected this one, to say. I think it has a good thing going here.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt would go on to say that he wrote it about people that were just happy in mundane lives, not social life, not anything, but just happy doing whatever. And it really, living inside of it, it also came across as an anthem, in my opinion, an anthem for that generation of happy, just doing nothing, sort of, just copacetic. And it always rang true. It's wild to read and then hear, that this was not a single, because this was airplay all over the place. This is one of, I mean, I don't know how many times they got to do it live, but I remember seeing shows of them doing this live, where people are just screaming it, as far as singing along with the refrain. I always love this one. I always love the fact that there's a cello on this album. Even back in the day, like, there's strings on this track. It was just always such a cool piece. And it's almost one of those ones that you'd miss unless you were really listening, or it caught you. I always love that about this track. This is a cool one. There's definitely a lot of nostalgia for me on this track. And the funny part is I hadn't listened to it in a while, but I mean, we're pretty much at this, in my opinion, the end of this chunk for me that was super nostalgic. Like, from Heart Shaped Box straight down to Dumb is a lot of my listening from a couple of years back then. So I mean, this is a really cool spot in the album for me.
Yeah, it's a really strong sequence of songs, I have to say. Very great 4-track run.
Yeah.
But with that being said, can they keep it up for track number 7? Well, that's up to you to decide. Track number 7 is called Very Ape, a song about false machismo, or toxic masculinity, perhaps is what they'd say now. It was originally titled Perky New Wave. I guess it has a new wave influence, but I don't really hear it here. Yeah, this one it's not as strong as the previous four songs. It's not even in the same league as them. So that's a knock against it already. But in all honesty, it's more of an interlude than the song. It's less than 2 minutes long. So I don't think much of it, but I can't get mad of it. I can't get mad about it because it doesn't take up too much of the album. And that's really all I have to say about it. I really don't have much more of a thought other than it's an interlude.
Yeah, it's a quick thought. It's a quick thought. It's a simple riff. I'm right with you. It's Kurt's tongue-in-cheek quick rant on alpha male, period. It's a very quick thought. It doesn't take away. It pumps us back up if I have to go silver lining playbook as far as our listening ears going into this next part of the album. But yeah, an interlude in its own. Yeah, it's right there at 2 minutes. It is.
Yep, it exists.
Yeah.
So there we have it. But we do have more of a full song for the next track, which is called Milk It. It was originally called PIL, and then it was called Milkmaid. This one's definitely one of the more experimental songs on the album, for sure. I really am not quite getting what this song is about. The lyrics are pretty random, and that's a disappointment to me after some of the previous songs that we heard on the album, which I felt did tell strong stories. This one, just, I don't think it's a clear thought, and I'm expecting clear thoughts at this point in the album, so for me, this is a disappointment. It also has some more unpleasant screaming. He's clearly hurting in this one. I mean, the lyrics do even sadly mention suicide. So there's an unfortunate undercurrent there, but on its own, this is not a favorite. I seem to be in the minority. It seems to be a fan favorite. It's even one of Dave Grohl's favorite Nirvana songs.
What? Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, man.
33 and a third book I read on this, it said that in 2005, Dave Grohl said this and Heart Shaped Box were his two favorite Nirvana songs.
Oof. Maybe because he gets to drum his ass off in it. I mean, this is a punk, avant-garde, abstract piece. Experimental. I love that. It is very experimental art here. Super crazy lyrics, off the wall lyrics. I'll tell you straight up, we're both in the minority. This was a skip for me back then. It never had anything for me as far as anything that I gravitated to. I've listened to it the least out of every track this week. As far as over and over and over again, there's just not much to this one. That's very surprising to hear. Then again, to everyone their own. Damn, Dave.
Yeah,
but I just for him saying that, I guess I have to go back and listen to it one more time. But
no,
it was never for me, and it still isn't. And you're right. It is a bit of a disappointment on this album, especially with the tracks that preceded it. But see, I don't think that it loses from its spot here. I just don't think it's a very strong song in any right, other than an avant-garde piece, and I'll give it that.
Yeah. But I hate to say it, I don't think this was the time to be putting an avant-garde piece on your follow-up to Nevermind. I just do that for a different project, not this. No.
Man, I gotta go back and listen to it. Sorry, Dave. Let me check it out again.
But we do get a bit more of a traditional sound with the next track, which is Penny Royalty. This is another song that predates Nevermind. Again, I'm just shocked that there's more than one song here that predates this album. That just, again, tells me this band wasn't gonna last for the long haul. We were already going back to pre-Nevermind for material.
Heard.
That's all I'm saying. But it actually was first played at the same show that saw the debut of Smells Like Teen Spirit. So,
Wow.
yeah, the song was definitely overshadowed by that. But this one actually, it was also remixed by Scott Litt after the first two songs that he remixed, which were Heart Shaped Box and All Apologies. He did this one a bit later because it was to be the third single, but it was canceled after Kurt Cobain's death. Which understandable, admittedly, kind of. Well, we'll get back to that. But in the meantime, I love that Scott Litt remixed all of these songs at the Bad Animals studio, which was founded by none other than Hart, Ann and Nancy Wilson. So love them. Had to mention them here because they were the first big Seattle band before all these boys. So gotta give them that respect. But so for those who don't know, penny royalty is, in the words of Cobain, an herbal abortive. So, okay, I guess, yeah, take that for what you will. I really don't want to get further into that. Just kind of depressing. I don't know. Okay, but he said it was kind of just about somebody who was so physically ill that they wanted to die, and that was something that Kurt Cobain could relate to throughout his life, being that ill he wanted to die. I am lucky to say that I haven't been that way. If I say I want to die, I don't literally mean it. Like, it's not one of those things. But yeah, it's a very well-liked song. I appreciate it from a storytelling standpoint. It doesn't do it for me like the earlier tracks that we had earlier, though. And I wouldn't have picked this as a single. Just me. I wouldn't have. I would have probably chosen Dumb as a single over this.
I love this song.
All right.
I've always loved this one. I don't know why. It's so somber. It's so well-fitting. I read that herbal abortive thing, and it's inside of a quote where he had laughed and said pennyroyal tea is about indigestion, and I just took the herbal abortive as like something to make you throw up. Long story, so I just took it a different way. But yeah, no, I've always loved this song. Grohl's drums are so beautifully almost offbeat in this. I just it, oh man, it perfectly portrays Kurt and what he was going through, I feel like. And I have to say, my favorite iteration of this ever was when they did Unplugged. The version of Pennyroyal Tea from Unplugged is Chef's Kiss. It is perfection. But yeah, I've always loved this one.
Yep. There was bound to be two sides of the same coin. I mean,
the first one on this album, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised it took till track 9, but
hell yeah,
there we go. It took till then. But as for this being canceled as a single, actually a big part of it might have been because one of the B-sides for this was a song called I Hate Myself and Want to Die, which was actually the original title for the album, not chosen for obvious reasons. That probably had a bit more to do with it being canceled as a single, because it was already pressed. It was literally recalled from production, which is insane.
Yeah, that's a tough sell. Yeah. I was gonna say pennyroyal tea would be a cool, I don't know. Yeah, that's
been
tough.
A cool
that's
video.
Tough. Yeah, it could have been a after death sort of thing, but still, yeah, no, that's tough. That's a tough sell. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, but it did get a record store day reissue almost 10 years ago, and people ate that up, of course.
Shit, that's cool, man. That's cool.
So, I'm glad it got something for everyone. I will say that. But speaking of singles, the next song's title literally means a hit single, Radio Friendly Unit Shifter. This is another one that was first recorded in early 1991. So, okay. I said what I thought about that. I don't think that's just a great sign for the band. But anyway, the lyrics on the original demo are actually apparently indecipherable because of just how it's done. So the lyrics for this might be completely different than what was presented back then. This is another one where I love the title, first of all. Love, love, love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But this is another one I'm not quite sure what the story is. It's a bit more of an experimental track to me. Like Milk It. I like it better than Milk It, but it's definitely more pleasant to listen to, I think, than that one. But it's just, yeah, it's not my favorite here. I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it either. Just kind of not for me.
Yeah, I'm not big on the vocals here. I'm not big on the way the vocals are delivered on this one. I love the fast stuff with them. I really do. I mean, this song, as far as a composition musically, it takes off and never looks back. I like I like the evolution of this composition a lot, actually. I just don't like the vocals on this song. The writing, when you read it, if that's the words he's singing, is way better than what the vocals deliver. And I really feel like it loses it loses me, but I really feel like it loses the song at that point. It's to the literally to the point of me questioning whether or not the title was tongue in cheek, like super tongue in
I
cheek.
think
It
it
was.
was.
So I mean, super
I,
on purpose. Just
I mean,
it's tough for me.
well, the thing is, obviously, this was a band that was big on being ironic,
Yeah.
and honestly, today that kind of is just lame to me. I think we've seen too much of it at this point. So sorry, guys. Sorry, Dave Grohl, if you're listening. I doubt you are, but I can hope you're listening.
Dave's listening.
Yeah, I certainly, yeah. But we've got another bit of avant-garde on the next track, which is Tourette's, shortest song on the album, even shorter than Very Ape. I'm almost forgetting the name of that already. This is the one least favorite on the album. This just does absolutely nothing for me. It doesn't. I don't feel like it's even a pleasant to listen to interlude. Like Very Ape is there. I don't feel like I have to run for the skip button. This one makes me want to run for the skip button. I just don't care for it. I think it's lame and doesn't have anything to say, really. If it is, I'm not getting the point. And just why the hell is it called Tourette's? That's because I know what that is. I do know what it is, but just why?
I can only like super reach and say that because I absolutely loathe the vocals here. And it's super short. I can only reach and be like, that's exactly what it's trying to do, is be like a Tourette's outburst. Something
Okay.
you don't want to hear. But I think that's me reaching. I looked to see if there was anybody out there as crazy as I was, and unfortunately on this one I didn't find it. The riff behind it is okay to me. I'm on the fence about whether I love it or not, but now the vocals here just ruin it. This was another skip for me back in the day. Um, of course, to get to the next track. I mean,
Yes.
that's what a skip is, but to specifically get to the next track we're going to talk about.
Well, yes, fortunately, the album is going to end strongly with all apologies. Again, another cello solo here from their friend Kira Shaley, the only other musician on the album. Kurt dedicated this song to both Courtney and Francis. And he said, like, the lyrics didn't describe them, but the feeling did, which makes sense to me. I can respect that. And of course, it was the second single along with Rape Me. So here's the hot tea take. I do like this song. There's a better version of it, and it's from MTV Unplugged. That version's better. That version actually did kind of serve as the music video for the song because there wasn't one filmed. I think that one just hits differently than this one. I like this fine, but the MTV Unplugged version just I take it over this one.
That's the way I felt about Penny Royal, so I'm with you. There's something about a Grohl drumming with a fan brush on like a jazz set snare, that really adds to a lot of these songs on that Unplugged jam. All Apologies on Unplugged is really good. I'm with you. This is it's a heck of a way to end this album, but it definitely sang through. I think Serve the Servants could have ended this album just the same, and maybe even hit harder and had more of a meaning behind it. But that's me reaching. I definitely think All Apologies does a good job closing it down. I mean, I'd be just repeating you. I love the composition. This is a good one. This is a good song. It is definitely one that has come across the test of time. It's still one that you could turn on and immediately is well known. Definitely sad to see it be the last recorded song from Kurt, or the last album track from him.
But kind of a fitting one too, admittedly.
Speaking of fitting, I thought I read, and I was hoping you would confirm it. I don't know if you know, but they put out it wasn't Rape Me and All Apologies, the A and B.
Yeah, they were the single together.
That is amazing. What a single, man.
A male seahorse giving birth on the cover.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I do love that. That's definitely two sides of the same coin there for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's definitely a good closer, I think, after the past couple of songs that I didn't enjoy as much.
Yeah, most definitely.
And that were much louder. This was a nice, calm way to close the album, which I appreciate.
It's definitely a wild mix of songs on this album. The pacing isn't off, but there's a schizophrenia about this album, in my opinion. Inside this, there are definitely two sides fighting vying for time on this album.
Yeah, but I do think that's reflective of this band.
Most definitely.
And I think that's part of the appeal for it for a lot of people, just because it so reflects that going back and forth. It is so different all around. But I think that's what people really enjoy about it. And they like how raw it is in comparison to the previous albums. So I definitely can see why this speaks to folks as much as it does.
Yeah.
For sure. But now, final judgment. What is your final grade for this album?
Nirvana-In Utero. It is definitely an awesome trek through Nirvana, as I've said way too many times, an evolving group of artists, an evolving band. From a heavy opening to an apologetic soft cello closing, it really runs the gamut. I had already said that it has two different sides, but this punk side and this poppy side fighting, and it is, like you said, characteristic of this band. I think it comes across well. There are some misfires here, not too many, not really any ones that take me all the way out of the album, but there are some in there that come very close. There is a solid middle of this album, which cannot be denied. Like I said before, the pacing is there, but there's a little bit left to be wanted, in my opinion, as far as a whole. I'm going to give Nirvana-In Utero a B.
Very, very fair grade. I actually, for this, this and Nevermind maybe apples and oranges, but I'm gonna give it the same grade I gave Nevermind, B minus. I mean, in comparison to Nevermind, I think that Nevermind just has higher highs and lower lows than this one. I don't think there's quite a Come As You Are, Smells Like Teen Spirit. Not quite for me here, but there also isn't Stay Away quite. So, and there is an evolution here that I appreciate. And again, that 4-track run is impeccable, but not everything else quite adds up to it for me. And I totally get why this album's beloved. It just isn't my sensibility. It doesn't speak to me in that way. And I can definitely respect it, but I don't see this just being one I go back to a lot after we're done with it. Frankly, there's others I'm definitely going to want to go back to this. This isn't one of them, I don't think, actually.
Heard.
But it was a neat trip, that's for sure. But for those who are just tuning in, we did put this album up against another in a little battle, up against Pearl Jam's Versus, which was released the same year. And, well, we have to decide which we liked better. So I'll let you go first, and you tell me what one you liked better.
I'm going Pearl Jam Versus. It fills out more as far as, I don't know if I would have said that back in the day. I love Pearl Jam. I love this album more when I was younger than I do now. But Pearl Jam is still a full, robust album that really doesn't miss that much. So I'm gonna go Versus.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I gave it a higher grade than this one. It just again, it spoke more to me. I felt like it just sounded better. The songs were more full, the stories were more thought out. I think this band just doesn't have that same storytelling singer-songwriter in the way that Pearl Jam does. I think they do that better than this band does. And I'm a big fan of the singer-songwriter, so it is natural, I think, that I would gravitate a bit more to Pearl Jam in this case. But Versus, it was a pretty easy win for me on this one, because Versus is one I'll definitely be going back to. I actually bought it on vinyl recently. So,
nice. Yeah.
But we had to ask everybody else what they thought, of course. And between the polls, it was pretty close. It was about a 60-40 split that we had. So not quite a blowout like last time with Madonna and Janet, but still a somewhat sizable margin. But with that being said, the winner was Versus by Pearl Jam.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, speaking of In Utero, because we now have a tradition of forgetting, what was your favorite track on the album?
Oh, Rape Me.
There you go.
A lot of it might probably definitely has to do with Succession, but it's still a great song.
I have to go All Apologies. I love that song. Always have.
A winner. Wow, what a perfect single for us, I guess. Perfect CD single back then. All Apologies and Rape Me.
There you go. There you go. Penny Royalty was right there, but All Apologies edged it out.
No, it wasn't a contest for me. But I was late to the bandwagon of that show, but I loved it so much, so I had to follow my heart on that one.
I like it.
But yeah, that does it. Our first ever album battles that we've ever done. I enjoyed doing them. I definitely like to do more in the future.
Yeah, that's super fun.
Yeah, but we're not going to be doing them next. In fact, so this is something you might know more about this if you're on our side of the tracks, but Ocean City, Maryland will be having its first annual Oceans Calling Music Festival at the end of September, and we will both be attending it. And,
down the beach, hon.
Yes, down the beach. And really big lineup of artists, some pretty big names on there. Lots of 90s bands especially, but a amount of 21st century too, I would say, is in there. Some up and comers for sure. Good variety. And because of that, our next month will be albums that will be represented at Ocean's Calling from the artists playing it. And we'll be doing that day by day. So the first day of the festival, which is on a Friday, there are actually two headliners that day, but one of them is none other than Miss Alanis Morissette. And naturally, with that, we will be covering none other than Jagged Little Pill.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Very excited for this one. I mean, it's Jagged Little Pill. What else? I think you know why it's exciting to do that just alone, just the fact that it's Jagged Little Pill. So, here we have it.
It's gonna be a fun one.
Most definitely. And so now, we are closing our heart-shaped boxes on grunge and album battles. And we're going to move on with one hand in our pockets and another one making our next podcast, and we hope you're all there for us next time.
Peace!